All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to start this lesson by giving all praises, glory, and honor unto Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Rachakudash, double honors to the elders and apostles of the Great Millstone, who taught us all this truth and who also rule and teach well. And shalom to Allah Achim in his truth and sincerity, starting with the 144,000 and the 1/3 of the nation of Israel, which we are fighting to be a part of. This is your brother Chabar Yakal, coming back, Lord willing, with another quick and edifying lesson. And the topic at hand, as you can see, is to the elect, even the bad is good fortune. All right. To the elect, even the bad is good fortune. All right. And the elect, the elect of Yahweh, which is the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which that's his true name in the ancient Hebrew, Bahasham, and the name Yahweh Shai, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. His true name is Yahweh Shai in the ancient Hebrew, which means he saves and he delivers. All right, Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai. The elect, the ones whom Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai has chosen, from among the chosen nation, which is the Israelites, you so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, and also Israelite foreigners, who don't look like those typical people, but in these last days, a remnant of them will come back to this truth. All right, as well as the ones who look like Israelites already. But the Lord chose a remnant of the nation of Israel, which is the elect. All right, beginning with the 144,000, as I always say, which we're fighting to be a part of. All right, and the 1/3, which consists of men, women, and children. All right, of the nation of Israel. No other nation. The Gentiles, that the New Testament speaks on, being able to come into the fold, the wild olive branch, that's talking about Israelites. You got two different type of Gentiles, but that's another topic for another time, Lord willing. I do a video on that as well, because there's a lot of demonic, wacky-tacky Christians, like the one who came down to our camp, GMS Atlanta. I forget his name. It was something for Christ. I'm gonna just say maggot for Christ, or dreadhead for Christ. I don't know his name, but he's irrelevant. There's a lot of wacky tacky Christians is pushing another doctrine. All right, the Gentiles can make it, but the Gentiles that can make it are the Israelites. Nevertheless, going back to the topic, to the elect, the ones who are chosen, that were predestined from the foundation of the world to make it, to understand the truth, to learn the truth, to understand it, and to ultimately, teach it and preach it and prophesy in the name of Yahweh Bashim Shai, confess his name, stand stiffly and boldly for those names. That was predestined before anything was created. Those spirits, the elect, whatever misfortune, Lord willing, we're part of it. Whichever misfortune we go through, whatever bad that we go through, ultimately is good. All right. As a wise man once said, we had to learn the negative to understand the positive and to appreciate it. We had to learn the negative side of the spectrum, which the man who said that was Elder High Priest Yaquab, the elders of our elders, one of the forerunners of this truth. That's a statement he made, and he's on. There's a video of him actually saying that, going back to, I believe, either the 80s or the 90s. But we had to learn the negative side of the spectrum to understand the positive. All right. And that's balance. So even the bad stuff that we go through right now, whether it be an injury, whether it be, sickness, a mental infirmity, because although, the Wadi Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, we don't have the plague of the mind. The Lord, is, dealing with us, and our minds aren't plagued. We have a sound mind through Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, because he has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of might and of a sound mind. We don't have a plague of the heart, but truth be told, we do have mental infirmities. We do have different character flaws and different things attached to this flesh, from childhood or from whenever, I'm just throwing it out there. It might not even be from childhood. You might have had a good childhood, but you went through a bad experience that scarred you mentally. We don't have the plague of the mind, but we do have mental infirmities, all right? So whatever it is, whatever problem it is, you might be going through something right now financially, you might feel like you're trapped in a situation, and it just seems like there's no way out. Whatever it is, ultimately in the grand scheme of things, it was for good. All right, because the elect is going to be saved in the end, no matter what happened, no matter what the elect had to go through. Look at the book of Job. That seems like the situation where there was no coming back from. That seems like that situation was a done deal, like he was just through. But the Lord redeemed him at the end. Everything went back to the way it was, and even better. All right, how much more in the last days and the climax of the Lord's movie? So I'm going to start in Genesis 32 and 25. And this is going into when Jacob encountered, the angels, and ultimately when he wrestled that angel. Verse 1 says, and Jacob went on his way, and the angels of Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, met him. And when Jacob saw them, he said, this is the powers or the Elohim's host. And he called, which a host is an army. And he called the name of that place Mahanaim. Excuse me, but I'm going to skip down to the point now. All right, and I believe this is also when he was going to meet Esau, his brother. Yep, this is before he was about to meet Esau. And Jacob was a little nervous about it, because he knew that Esau wanted to kill him after, he supplanted him, of the birthright, which Esau really gave it away. But, Jacob still, he worked his magic, so to speak, and supplanted him. So he was kind of nervous because he knew that his brother was basically out for blood. Which Esau is the so-called white man, the Edomites. All right, they're the wicked, the evil twin brother of the Israelites, which again are these so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. That's why there's always conflict and there's always friction between the so-called white race, the Edomites, and so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Just look at what's going on with ICE. All right, look at what's been going on in America from its inception. Slavery, the transatlantic slave trade. All right, the Trail of Tears. That's not a coincidence. That's because it goes back to Jacob and Esau. All right. But I'm gonna get, like I said, I'm gonna get to the point because I wanted to make a point here. I'm gonna start at 22. It says, and he rose up that night, speaking about Jacob, and took his 2 wives and his 2 woman servants and his 11 sons, and passed over the ford Jabbok, all right, or Jabbok, however you want to say it. And he took them and sent them over the brook, and sent over that he had. All right. Matter of fact, I want to read this in the NLT. It says, during the night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives and his 2 servant wives, because you could have multiple wives. All right, there's nothing wrong with that. There's no scripture in the Bible that said Jacob went off. Jacob sinned against the Lord by having multiple wives. There's no scripture on that, but a wacky-tacky, moronic, simple-minded, bonehead, wacky-tacky Christian will try to demonize the idea of having multiple wives. But that's how you be fruitful and multiply. It's like you wonder why why birth rates are slowing down on the earth. Okay, especially among the Edomites. But if they had, let's say if they had multiple women and that was just the norm, they wouldn't have the declining birth rates. Which to hell with them anyway. I'm just making a point. And if Israelites had multiple women, which they do, a lot of Jacobs do, but if that was the norm, if that was normal, as it was in the ancient world, basically, there would be so many Israelites on earth right now. But you got, the wicked, the devil ruling. So you got stuff like abortions. This is a wicked, evil society that demonizes, having multiple women, when that's the way it should be. And the times we're living in, especially, it's hard to live on your own. If you had multiple women, you would have an economy, which the word economy actually means house, a household. You would have an economy if you got multiple wives, making money. And even if they don't work, they're taking care of everything in the house, so you don't got to worry about nothing. You could have 2 jobs because you don't got nothing to worry about. You got 2, 3 wives, making sure everything is running smoothly. That's wisdom. All right, not to get off on a tangent, but continuing on. And his 11 sons crossed the Jabbok River with them. After taking them to the other side, he sent over all his possessions. This left Jacob all alone in the camp, and a man came and wrestled with him until the dawn began to break. All right, and that man wasn't an ordinary man; that was an angel. That's why I read verse 1, because the angels, the Lord was sending his angels to Jacob. Even before this, he was sending his angels. This was just another angel that the Most High sent, all right, that Yahweh sent to Jacob, and he wrestled with him, all right. The Lord is the one who sent him. It says when the man saw that he would not win the match, he touched Jacob's hip and wrenched it out of its socket, all right. So the angel knew he wasn't going to win because Jacob wasn't giving up. Jacob was not giving up. In the KJV, it said he prevailed not against him. Continuing on in the NLT, then the man said, "Let me go, for the dawn is breaking." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." All right. "What is your name?" the man asked. He replied, "Jacob." "Your name will no longer be Jacob." The man told him, "From now on you will be called Israel, because you have fought with the Most High." Or really, you have fought with power. The Hebrew word is Allahim, or Allah, which means power. And with men, and have won. All right, now the point that I wanted to get, and I'm going to read this in the KJV now. In verse 25, it says, "And when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint as he wrestled him." So, if you're looking at it from a certain perspective, you could say that was bad fortune. That was bad. That was something that wasn't good. The fact that the angel dislocated his hip. Which if your hip got dislocated, you can't even use that leg anymore. Or at least you can't use it like you used to. And the fact that he was even wrestling with an angel, you could look at that as if that was a bad thing. But in the truth, sometimes you're wrestling with something. Sometimes, and a lot of times it'd be a left-handed angel you're wrestling with. Most of the time, because we're dealing with all kind of demons coming up against us mentally. So now it's a spiritual wrestling. He was back then. Jacob was physically wrestling that angel, but now we're spiritually wrestling. It tells you that in Ephesians 6. All right, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but now it's a spiritual battle. It's a spiritual war. We're dealing with all kind of demons, all kind of. I already mentioned mental infirmities. All kind of thoughts come through your head in this truth. All kind of demons trying to stray you away. All right. And then on top of that, you got your own people coming up against you. And I said it when I spoke last Saturday at camp. I made a statement. The most hell you catch when it comes to people, your main enemies be your own people. All right. Of course, Esau, Edom, he's spraying chemtrails. He's doing this. He's doing that, messing with the food. He's the damn devil. But on a personal level, on a personal day-to-day, face-to-face level, your own people are the ones causing you trouble and giving you hell. And don't get it twisted though. There is moments where, you're dealing with Edomites and they're coming up against you, they're causing you trouble. That's going to happen too. But I'm saying the main hell, the main resistance, the main, people that antagonize you on your day-to-day life be your own people. And the scriptures back that up. Yahweh Shai said a man's foe shall be the of his own household. That's not just talking about your literal house. It's talking about the house of Israel. All right. It's talking about, your tribe, so on and so forth. But Israelites, your own people are the main ones that come up against you in this truth. And I could say that from experience, The point I'm saying is, you could look at it as if that's a bad thing, but they're a necessary evil. I remember Elder Apostle Gabara, when scoffers used to be on a real high level, which were in the times where the scoffing is actually about to turn up, I believe. You got wacky-tacky Christians, you got agents. This is still the hopeful year of Jacob Strobel and the year of agents and fallouts. So, the year isn't over yet. I believe there's going to be a lot more scoffers, a lot more agents coming up. And of course, it's going to be balanced. There's going to be new believers and newcomers that come into this truth as well. It's going to be a balance. The Lord is all about balance. All right. So it's going to be balanced, but there's going to be more scoffers. There's going to be more enemies coming up to camp, more weirdo, agent activity. But you could look at it like this. The same way, the Lord sent that angel and wrestled with Jacob and he dislocated his hip. He basically injured him, The same way, ultimately, that was a good thing because he got a blessing. His name was changed to Israel. That's a powerful name that's going to be on our nation for eternity. And it's going to be personified in the kingdom of heaven. Yashar Allah, which means he is a prince of power. All right. So that was ultimately a good thing because the scriptures tells you a good name is above. Matter of fact, let me get that real quick. Hold up. That's off. I'm going to read both of these, Proverbs 22:1. A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches and loving favor rather than silver and gold. This is the one I really want, Ecclesiastes 7:1. A good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of one's birth. So because he wrestled that angel, even though he got injured, even though, he was probably exhausted, he was wrestling him all night. We're talking about an angel. An angel could destroy the whole planet. The Lord could command one angel, and he could destroy the whole planet if the Lord put out that order. One angel killed like 70,000, Salakia, I forget the exact amount, but one angel killed thousands of men of the Assyrians. Another angel killed thousands of Israelites, and the Lord had to intervene and stop that angel. So that's the power of an angel, and Jacob was wrestling with one. Now of course the angel wasn't trying to kill him, but still that's undeniable power. That you can't downplay the power of an angel. Jacob was probably completely exhausted by the time, the sun came up. And you could look at that as if it was a bad thing, but ultimately, was it really? It's the same thing with the elect. All the shit that we got to deal with, ultimately, hey, it goes into my next scripture. Let me go ahead and get it. All right, Romans chapter 8 and verse 28. And it reads, it says, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, to them who are called according to his purpose, which is the elect. All right, matter of fact, let me look up that word called. All right. Kletos, called, invited to a banquet. We've all been invited, to the supper. All right. It tells you in Revelation, Yahweh Shai said, I stand at the door and knock. If any man open unto me, I will come in unto him and I will sup with him and he with me. And that word sup ultimately goes into eating, because when you sit down and eat with someone, you open up to them, you start having a conversation while you're eating. It's like a bonding moment. That's what the Lord has invited us to. Right now, this feast. Okay, this truth is likened unto food. He said, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. And then on another level, the banquet, ultimately when Yahweh Shai returns in what the world ignorantly calls a UFO and beams up the elect before those nuclear missiles destroy America, and all the people who take that RFID chip, which is the mark of the beast, they're going to be in that lake of fire from those missiles. The lake of fire is going to be America after it's hit with nuclear missiles and destroyed off the face of the earth. And you wacky-tacky Christians, you're going to be in that fire unless you repent. And you're an Israelite if you repent, but the point that I was trying to make, that banquet is going to take place when Yahweh Shai beams up the elect. When we get those new bodies, Yahweh Shai even said, I'm not going to drink of the wine of grape until, basically I return and drink it with the elect. Roughly paraphrasing, Invited by the Most High in the proclamation of the gospel, to obtain eternal salvation in the kingdom through Yahweh Shai, called to the discharge of some office, divinely selected and appointed. Lord willing, we're of that number. We've been divinely selected. How? Because before anything was created, those spirits were already selected to be the top spirits in the universe. All right, the top spirits that's going to rule underneath Yahweh Shai on the earth. So all things work, I'll read that again. All things work together for good to them that love Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. Well, that's why we're constantly saying his name, because we love him. That's why we're constantly doing his will, because we love him. Love is an action. Love is the keeping of the commandments. Although we're not saved by the commandments, but we keep them to the best of our ability. And we do the things that he told us to. Lord willing, unto the end, it says, to them who are called according to his purpose. And what is his purpose? Us teaching, us going through the fiery furnace and becoming purified. Us going through all kind of afflictions. The same afflictions Yahweh Shai went through. Us carrying our cross daily. In the NLT, it says, and we know that the Most High causes everything to work together for the good of those who love the Most High, Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, and are called according to his purpose for them. So everything works together for the good. Even if it doesn't seem like it. It's not going to seem like it. And the hour of temptation is not going to seem like it's a good thing, but ultimately it is a good thing, because it's going to show that we truly believe when we're put to the ultimate test. When they put that chip in our face and say, if you don't take this, you're going to be beheaded. If you don't take this, you're going to starve. If you don't take this, da-da-da-da-da. So on and so forth. that's going to be the ultimate trial of our faith. And that's ultimately a good thing, because it's going to go down in history, just like Jacob wrestling the angel. Just like the 3 holy children, that went down in history, even though it seemed like it was a bad thing. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and give Matthew 5 and 10. And Lord willing, this lesson is making sense. I hope, I pray this lesson is making sense. But I'll read this verse 10, Matthew 5 and 10. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake. Being persecuted doesn't feel good. It doesn't seem like it's a good thing. It seems like it's a bad thing, which it is. But in the grand scheme of things, was it really? It says, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Because in the kingdom of heaven, the ones that was persecuted for righteousness' sake, that's going to be remembered forever. Everyone, just like we see Job. Job was persecuted. I believe that's actually what his name means. I think his name means hated or persecuted, which is Ayawab in the Hebrew. He went down in history. The elect, each member of the 144,000 is going to have their own book in the kingdom. Throughout all their incarnations, all the lives that they lived in the truth. From this life, which is the ultimate one, the last one, Lord willing, we're the elect, all the way on back, to whenever the beginning of their story was. Each member of the 144,000 is going to have their own book. Each member of the elect is going to have their own book. It's going to be immortalized, all right, memorialized. Everyone is going to know about it. Everyone's going to remember it. Everyone's going to have to acknowledge it for eternity. That's an eternal glory. You were persecuted for Yahweh Bashem outside in a weak body, in the flesh. Everything was against you. Every thought was against you. Everything was out to get your crown. But you still 10 toes down, no matter what. No matter how anyone looked at you, no matter what anyone said about you, no matter how anyone made you look, demonized you. Because these white Kentucky Christians, we see what they're doing. Beginning with that fat head, Mr. Malone. All right, I'm gonna just say that, Mr. Malone. But we see what they're doing. The persecution. But that's ultimately a good thing. That's a necessary evil. Yeah, it's an evil, but it's a necessary evil. It shows that this is the truth and that we're on the good side. Just like, Star Wars. You got the Jedis and then you got the Sith. The light side and the dark side, We're on the light side because we got the truth and we're being persecuted. Continuing on, blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my name's sake. So all those things are bad. All those things don't feel good. But ultimately, you're blessed because the Lord chose you to go through that for his name's sake. So he'll confess you to his Father, which is in heaven. That's a blessing. Look at what Yahushua went through. He was persecuted on the highest level that any man ever was. And we have the honor of being persecuted too for righteousness' sake. That's a blessing. And Lord willing, it leads on to everlasting life, which it will if we continue on. That's why it says, rejoice and be exceeding glad, for your reward is great. For great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. So persecution seems bad, but ultimately it was good for us. Oh, call Allah Yahweh outside. The priest just came to me. Let me see if I can find it. This is Psalms 119 and 71. It is good for me that I have been afflicted, that I might learn thy statutes. The average mortal, if you said something like that, like it's good for me that I'm catching hell. It's good for me that all this bad shit's happening to me. The average mortal will look at you like you're crazy, like you're bugged out, because they're just a mortal. All right, they're just an NPC. They're just a background character. But a member of the elect understands ultimately this is a good thing, because I'm the Lord's. This fire is forging me and making me a better man. I have thicker skin now. I could endure more hell now, and ultimately I'm doing it for righteousness' sake. I'm being persecuted. This is my lot. The Lord gave me a goodly heritage. And I understand why I'm going through what I'm going through. Most people can't say that. Most people that are going through shit in life, they can't say they understand why. We can. It is good for me that I was afflicted. All right, James 1:2. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations. In the NLT, dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. All right? So when any type of trouble comes to you, and in this truth, trouble will come. That's a guarantee. Trouble will come to you in this truth. And we're coming into the time of great trouble, the time of Jacob's trouble. In the NLT, it says, for you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow, for when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. That's the kingdom of heaven, ultimately. The sufferings that we go through is only temporary, but it's going to lead to an eternal joy, an eternal, glory. Like I believe 1 Corinthians 4:17 says. But Lord willing, this lesson was edifying and comforting. Once again, giving our praise to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai.